So, the workshop is titled, Are You Tired of Being Tired? Because I think that most people are. Intellectually, we have these conversations about what being tired looks like. And I think that some of us wear it as a badge of honor. I think that's something that I have done. Culturally, being tired, we associate that with being overworked. And for some reason, a lot of us take pride in overworking ourselves because it means that we're working towards something, like a bigger picture, whether it's to support our family or whether it's for our jobs, for business, or whatever it may be. Getting out of the cult of tired is pretty much my goal for everyone so that we can kind of shift the perspective and also have different conversations about what being tired looks like and how we can help each other in a more authentic way. So I have three different archetypes. So a couple of people reached out to me and shared like specifically what they're going through. So I do think that this kind of accommodates everyone. So the first one is the overcommitted optimist. So this is someone who takes too much. I'm sorry if you guys can hear my dog snoring. Someone who takes on too much because they genuinely believe that they can handle it all. So personally, that is me, driven by a mix of enthusiasm, people pleasing tendencies, and FOMO. So I more so like to help all of the people around me, even if I know I don't have the time or energy to do so. I do tend to overcommit, even though I know better. So the first problem from the perspective of this person is if I plan everything perfectly, then I can fit it all in. So I'm a very good planner. So I overcommit because I am too confident in my abilities to solve problems all of the time, which is also my Achilles heel. Problem number two is procrastinating on starting tasks because you are overwhelmed by the volume of the things that you've committed to. And by consequence, jumping from one activity to another without actually completing things. And then three, oscillating between excitement and stress. Because oftentimes some of the projects that I take on are business driven. And so they can be very exciting and very interesting and things that I'm passionate about. But because of the long list of things that I already have to do, it can just make me feel a little bit more drained, easier, or and quicker. So, if you guys, I typically tell people to bring like a notepad and stuff to take notes, but I'm going to send this all to you so you don't have to. But if you want me to slow down or you have any questions, just put them in the chat. So, the overcommitted optimist, pretty much if that resonates with you, the three key things you want to do are learn how to set boundaries, prioritize yourself, your responsibilities, the most core responsibilities for your well being and just for your functioning of your day. And then also redefining what success looks like. So, the first solution is doing an energy audit. So, when I send you guys the workbook, you will have a 7-day energy audit where you will go from Monday through Sunday. And you will pretty much take from the hours of, I believe, 5 a.m. to 12 midnight. And what you will do is define for your morning, your afternoon, and your evening slash nighttime where your energy levels fluctuate. So if you have high energy levels first thing in the morning, at what time do your energy levels start to deplete? So, pretty much, you're going to do that for about 7 days and track it so that you can first get a better idea of where you're starting from. And then, two, it can also help you in decision making. So, if I know that I have a more physically, more physically involved activity that I have to do or that I want to do, maybe like scheduling a workout. I know that I'm not going to do that first thing in the morning. During my sprints right now, I've been working a lot. So, with me working a lot, I haven't been sleeping as well. So, working out first thing in the morning would be a good way to get energy because that's actually what a lot of studies have found. However, for me, being as sleep deprived as I have been, that is not the safest thing for me to do. So, generally, I like to schedule my workouts in the middle of the day. So, what you're going to do is write down also the things that you've committed to this week and then rate each task on a scale of 1 to 10 based on how much energy it will require. And then go back to that energy audit based on your days, Monday through Sunday, and then see where you can fit it in, basically based on your time and then also your energy level. And so then solution number 2 is the 3 priorities rule. So every day, most planners have this, but if you don't have a planner or use one, you can just use your notes section. I do that as well. You just pretty much write your 3 priorities for every single day, your non-negotiables of things that must be completed in order for you to feel like you've had a successful day. So usually, I try to tell people to balance this. Don't make them all work related or productivity related. Like the first rule for me is journaling or having a moment of silence. So, usually, when I journal in silence, or if I don't feel like writing or I'm not really in that space, then I will just meditate, or sometimes I might even just go for a walk. But that is one of my non negotiables for every single day. Another one could be working for me, it's working on my book, so I make sure that I take time to write on different platforms every day and then also working on my book. And then another one is physical activity because I work from home, so I tend to sit still for very long periods of times. So making sure that I'm being active, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later too, and how that actually helps with your energy, not just being physically active, but also making sure that your muscles are healthy and hydrated. So solution number 3 is practice saying no without guilt. This is something that everyone talks about when it comes to self-care. But what has been more practical for me is creating a script for declining requests. And I've actually just done this with a friend who just learned how to set boundaries with someone who's pretty much always inviting them to stuff, and they have not always wanted to go, but their friend is a little bit more of a peer pressure person. So we had them write a script for every time this person wants to invite them out and they don't have the energy. Because oftentimes what people do, instead of just saying no, they'll say, oh, well, I have to, help my friend out with this. Sorry. Or, oh, actually, I didn't get much sleep. So maybe tomorrow for sure. Like they can't just say no without providing some sort of explanation behind it, whether it's true or not. Most of the people that I know lie about their commitments just to get out of things, which is a natural thing. But I wanted to try to get out of that. Let me admit, Marina. So I want us to try to get out of that mentality. So creating a script. So think about, I would say, the last 10 things that people have asked you for that you feel like you've overcommitted to, and write a script pretty much. Even if you've already said yes to it, it doesn't hurt to just get into the practice of reframing these things. So just, thank you for thinking of me. Thank you for considering. But at this point in my capacity, I know that when I give these examples, a lot of times people comment that it's a little too robotic. So make it sound however would be natural for you. Some people would just flat out say, like, I don't have the time or energy for it. If that's your best way of explaining it, then that's perfectly fine. I personally don't think that you owe anyone deep exploratory explanations unless they are people that you are responsible for or responsible to. So for the exhausted perfectionist, this
Я
one I
приготовила кушать тебе.
oh,
Ты не будешь кушать, что я приготовила?
you-
А? Надень уши.
I got it. So okay, that was Russian. Interesting. Okay, so no, exhausted perfectionist. So this is someone who spends a lot of time trying to do everything right, and most of the time they experience burnout. Let me get one more in. And they struggle to delegate because they feel that no one can pretty much meet, or yeah, no one can meet their high standards. So this is also something with me. I have a hard time delegating because I often think that no one can do anything that I envision better than myself, which is not generally an ego thing, because I do really believe that anyone can learn any skill at any point in time. But I do have like a strong sense of urgency and a lot of deadlines. But what that really means is I put an unnormal amount of expectations on myself unnecessarily. So and this is also in relation to self-worth. Oftentimes, I know that growing up, my self-worth has always been tied to my output. So what I can produce or what I can do, what I can provide, how much I can accomplish. And that's something that takes a while to get over. So even though intellectually I certainly understand this, um, it has just been an adjustment. So I'll share with you guys some things that have helped. I don't need to go over all of the problems. You guys can read those, but pretty much the main thing is just feeling guilty when you rest, feeling like if you don't do things perfectly, that it doesn't matter, and just overthinking things or overthinking yourself into analysis paralysis, which I know I talked about with a couple of people. So pretty much just not making decisions. And so we're going to get into that as well. The solutions for this. So the good enough checklist. So this is pretty much what I do, and even for my own workshops. Notoriously, whenever I have a workshop or a book or something that I create, I always have some sort of grammatical error, either repeating the same sentence literally twice back to back, or it just might be obvious and word obviously spelled wrong. And that's just mostly because I rush a lot of things, because I'm constantly creating content. But part of my good enough checklist for my work has just been, as long as people can get what they need to receive out of it, then it's good. If there's a word that's misspelled, that's not going to stop people from receiving the message. So I stopped kind of putting that pressure on myself to make everything look perfectly and spending hours just aligning everything and making sure that this word is in the same space on this page versus the other page, and all of those sort of tedious tasks that take up a lot of mental energy and just a lot of unnecessary time. So defining what done looks like before you start a task and setting realistic benchmarks for your completion. Number two is having daily non-negotiable rest. So, blocking out at least 30 minutes for an activity that feels restorative. So, that could just be lying down. What I like to do is diaphragmic breathing. So, I do that usually for about 45 minutes throughout the day. So, I'll do it in like 15-minute increments. One, to just help to take in more oxygen, and two, just to help to silence myself for a while. Another one is reading for pleasure. Did someone have a question? No, I think that's just someone. Okay. Number three is just scheduling imperfection. So another thing that has helped me. So assigning yourself a task where you must finish without over perfecting. So, like I said, for me, that's usually when I do workshops like this or workbooks. I create about 20 workbooks every week. And so my main goal is just to get those 20 done over making sure that they're all perfect. So whatever that might look like for you guys, allowing yourself room for error, and then also just room for judgment-free creation. And then the last one is the distracted drifter. So struggling to focus and feeling scattered. So these are people that typically have a hard time sticking to a schedule or any sort of routine, and caught in the cycle of avoiding responsibilities altogether, and then feeling like you are trying to catch up all the time. So really, most of this, what this looks like is overuse of social media, or any sort of mentally kind of disengaging activity, which obviously you can be engaged with social media or television or things like that. But most of the time, even though we believe it's intentional, the intention that we have has more consequences. So our intention is to relax, right? Is to check into something that feels a little bit better, rather than our life responsibilities. However, we kind of get more lost in our low priority task, and so that it pretty much forces us to miss anything, any opportunities for moving your day along. So the alternating between feeling apathetic and then also panic. And so I think a lot of people can get stuck in that, and then also become too comfortable with the idea of being stagnated altogether. All right, so then solutions for that, starting with 5-minute habits. So beginning any task by committing just to 5 minutes. So whether that's cleaning a certain room, I know in my last workshop I talked about like going from room to room and pretty much determining what areas you want to deep clean, what areas you want to reevaluate in terms of furniture, donating things, throwing things away, or just reorganizing things. I what I recommended to people was committing to just 5 minutes. I think we all have certain areas in our home where maybe there's more clutter than we would like, or maybe there's just something that we are not, we have been avoiding, I guess. So just starting with 5 minutes. So if that's cleaning a room or going through clothes for donation, then go ahead, set a timer literally just for 5 minutes. I do this also for working out. For the days that I do not feel like working out, I always just start a timer for 5 minutes to do something. And sometimes I end at the 5 minutes because I'm just like mentally checked out. And sometimes I continue going. What I'll just do is ask myself, like, can I go for another 5 minutes? Or perhaps can I go for 15 more minutes? And just kind of starting small frees you from the overwhelm of like that analysis paralysis, but then also can help you to just focus on that one task at hand. And obviously, mindfulness is a lot more. Oh, thank you. I'm glad these are good. The mindfulness activities can ground you more so that you aren't more prone to those distractions. So then solution number two is obviously eliminating or just minimizing your use of digital distractions. So I don't personally use these apps, but this was recommended to me by a client, Forrest. So they help you to block out social media. And then also for your computer, there are different Google Chrome applications you can download or extensions to help you to distract certain sites during work hours. So just also setting aside 30-minute blocks for focus work and then having a break. So I've been scheduling like 5 to 10 minute breaks every hour, which is not something that I've used to do. So I haven't been doing it long enough to say whether or not it's been invaluable to me, but obviously it makes sense. So I would think that something like that would be useful. And then the one thing method, so focusing on completing one task fully before moving on to the next. Another thing that has helped me because I am constantly working on certain things, I have daily and weekly quotas for my work. But I am a creator and I'm an artist, so I'm constantly inspired by things. So sometimes I will stop a task if I have an idea and I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to write this out and work on this. And sometimes it works in my favor. Most times it doesn't. So kind of staying focused on just, okay, I'm going to write whatever I need to, like the bare minimum, just so that I don't forget, but then focus on completing the task that I was working on first. And if I can't complete that before my excitement starts for moving on to the next one, I will redefine what done looks like so that way I can move on. Just kind of a little hack to justify moving forward in a different direction. So, like I said, determining what time you expect to feel tired in the workbook that I give you guys, that's going to pretty much help you. So, most people anticipate feeling tired at some point during the day. And so, usually we try to like drink coffee, or some people take power naps, or some people will go to work out to get a new burst of energy. So, really kind of going beyond your own thoughts about that, I really encourage everyone to do the exercise so that you have the exact data. Even if it's not accurate to every single day, it's a better starting point than just kind of guesstimating. Um, so when your energy dips, this usually kind of leads to us mentally checking out or avoiding responsibilities or having a strong desire to avoid responsibilities. And so habitually disengaging can be a way of kind of coping with our fatigue, but it also signals the need for better energy management throughout the day. So with energy management, first, we always have to talk about time management. So in the workbook, I pretty much give you guys this information, but a little bit more in depth. So time mastery is about creating space. So it's not just about constant productivity. That was a big lesson for me. I think intellectually we all understand this, but oftentimes we put on unnecessary amounts of pressure and responsibility on ourselves. But then we also have necessary or not even just relevant, but responsibilities that we cannot escape from, right? Like if we're responsible for another human being or responsible for a portion of managing a home, or for our work or different things. So making room for mental clarity and reflection throughout your day, and then also presence, mindfulness throughout your day is important. So I know that some people have extenuous like work schedules, and then some people also mentioned having some health conditions that kind of prevent them from taking on more responsibilities. So, what I recommend are like the bare minimums of each of these things. So, everything that I'm sharing with you guys, if you feel like that's too difficult, send me a message and I can kind of break something down into a more of a starting point. There are things that I've been able to just jump into and get it right away. And then there are things that have taken time just because my brain takes a while to adjust to big changes, especially when you get comfortable kind of being how you are or just living life a certain way. So, making sure that you have downtime, intentional planning also reduces guilt. I feel like for me, when I do not like do those three priorities every day, I feel a little bit worse at the end of the day, even if I accomplish the same amount of things, just because it's a small way to gauge whether or not I feel I'm doing the right thing. And so without having that intention set and making it something clear that I can check off, it doesn't give me the same level of satisfaction, which shouldn't make that much sense because consciously I'm aware. However, it's just one of those things with your brain that it just makes you feel a little bit more satisfied being able to check off and um, understand that you have made progress with something that you set the intention of doing. And then also just remembering that energy is not finite. So proper time management also helps you to replenish your energy instead of depleting it. And that's more tied to, like I said, once you do that energy audit. And then simplicity reduces stress. This is probably one of the most important parts of this. Organizing and planning ahead, just being proactive. Like I said, once you have your energy audit, it'll be easier for you to be more proactive to minimize chaos and unnecessary strain. So that way, if something does come into your day that was unexpected, you can more properly fit it into your day if you know, okay, well, not only do I have a time window between 5 and 6 p.m., but perhaps that's when my energy starts to be depleted routinely. So then maybe that's when you can do like an energy boosting activity. And we'll talk about some of those. And then just also, one of the reminders that I wrote down is just to make it through the day of constant requests with less stress. Prioritize planning ahead by setting boundaries for when and how you will respond to demands. That is another thing I always tell people. Most people allow others this chaos to interrupt their day. Most of my friends, including myself, when we have someone that needs us, whether it's an actual emergency or just an emotional emergency, we tend to want to make time for those people. And that's always a beautiful thing to do. However, keeping in mind that people should also be respectful of your time. So if you are routinely making space for these people, but they're not able to manage themselves, that is more disruptive to yourself. I have one friend in particular who has a young lady who calls her about every day, and just kind of dumps her emotions on her without first processing it. And so this is a boundary that she's just recently begun to set with her, just to better let her know, she's starting a business now. And so she has so many different responsibilities in addition to her current ones, her job, her family, she has dogs, and um, also, she just started a goal to go to the gym every day. So she has so many different changes already. And so having a support system is great, but also making sure that the people in your life are not taking away from your ability to meet those new expectations. So, also just for better time management in general, creating more intentional to-do lists. Like I said, it can start with those three priorities every day. But then also what I always recommend to people is having daily, weekly, and monthly not to-do lists, but more like rituals, things that keep you on track. So they can be work related, but they can also be personal development related or health related, whatever your priorities should be. Um, and then adopting a done is better than perfect mindset. Like I said, whatever task that you are doing, just avoid over perfecting it and just finish and move on. So, this is also, like I said, something that has really, really helped me. Very simple, but profound. So, we are seldom tired by the things that we enjoy doing. Now, for this, I do know that I messaged a few people about analysis paralysis. And I think that we draw energy by engaging in activities that bring us joy. Not only has this just been studied, but I also think anecdotally, this is something that we have at least heard, if not experienced, especially when we are in the flow state. For me, that's involved when I'm in any sort of artistic endeavor. So, painting, writing, like creative flow writing, or dancing, whatever it may be that's creative for me or artistic. I never feel depleted of energy. In fact, I feel just kind of um, static, or my energy goes up a little bit more in terms of fluctuations versus downwards. Um, so we often deplete ourselves when the dissatisfaction sets in. So we confuse, or when I would say when conflict takes over, then it acts more like a short circuit. So draining our energy and leaving us feeling more exhausted. And ultimately, what I mean by that is kind of what I was referring to earlier, allowing ourselves or not allowing ourselves to sit still in moments of pleasure and kind of being easily distracted and pulled out of those things. So, finding pockets of joy in your daily routine that energize you, like taking a walk or listening to music or engaging in some sort of hobby, these are things that can kind of put you more into a safe space of energy, and then also just recognizing that joy will fuel energy. So, any activity that brings you true joy and fulfillment will boost your energy and vitality by activating more positive emotions and then releasing more of those feel good chemicals that we like, that we also get from social media. But these will be a lot more of a healthier way of achieving this. So, also just remembering that negativity drains energy. So, like I said previously, setting boundaries, I think, is one of the most important things that many people can learn how to practice. Because the more dissatisfaction you have with yourself, and you realize when you're not counting on yourself, those moments of um, lack of self respect, or lack of um, self management, or poor self management, lead it to us feeling more dissatisfied, because then we don't feel like we're capable of truly meeting our own goals and supporting our own best interests. So then just remembering balance. So overindulgence in pleasurable activities can lead to burnout as well. So this is when let's say I always use social media. I'm trying to generate some other ideas about it, but social media is one of the most key things, or watching movies. I have a friend who they pretty much watch movies every single day, and they have like intellectual reasons for doing it. They have creative reasons for doing it. It inspires them because they're in that industry, but then they also do it just for pleasure. And so, being intentional, one thing that we've done pretty much is having them set that intention every day of one of their three priorities is to make sure that when they are engaged in that activity, that they are doing something that's more productive for them. So if they are going to watch a movie and all they want to do is just enjoy the movie, perhaps it might be practicing a scene from the movie, or it might be doing a little analysis in their mind, just whatever the minimum of that might look like, just so that dissatisfaction won't sink in and they won't feel like they've been unproductive towards something that they are using both in a productive manner, but then also in a pleasurable sense. And then just alignment with values. I also think that sustaining energy means prioritizing activities that are not enjoyable, but aligned with your goals and values. So, or not just enjoyable, I'm sorry, but aligned with your goals and values. So, I've had clients where we've gone over their value to activity ratio, or action ratio. So, most times we do not live in alignment with our true values. For example, we may say that we value family, right? Or close relationships. Recently, I had a conversation with a friend who I believe was pretty much, they were just complaining about a certain family member that was calling them about like a problem that they were having in a relationship. And so, not to say that you cannot also experience conflict with the sort of things that you value, but in this particular case, her complaint was not warranted. She just wanted to complain because she felt like it was more of an opportunity to feel better than the person. in helping them in their situation. And so the value of valuing family, she has this kind of like family over everything mentality. The conversation that we had was pretty much about helping her see the weak areas where she's not truly being honest with herself about how authentic her approach to healing these relationships with her family are. Because at the first sign of someone needing her, someone that has never like, crossed boundaries and different things, this was not like a what's the word, like a toxic sort of thing. They just wanted her opinion on something. And instead of just being happy to provide it. She was happy in the sense that the person wanted her help, but that gave her ego such a sense, like a boost, that it made her feel better than the person. And so that's a very small, kind of, I think, subtle thing, but it was something that she wasn't aware that she was doing. And not to say that now everything is just going to change, but I think having those things being brought to one's attention can be very, very useful in seeing how our day to day interactions, or even little things like that, and perspectives and conversations that we have with ourselves, and the way that we perceive situations are very telling about what our true values are, what our lived values are, and what we say our values are. And then also just integrating rest and play. So move on. So one of the activities that I have for you guys, and this is also in the workbook, is just pretty much writing down activities that, or exercise, writing down activities that bring you pleasure and energy. So you just want to take a moment and list 3 activities that make you feel recharged or joyful and alive. So this could be socializing. For me, I know when I do have the social energy, I love to go to networking events and work the entire room. That always gives me a boost of energy, especially before I'm about to start a new business project. Spending time in nature, going on hikes, but then also just going on walks. That's something that always boosts my energy. Um, I also tell people to not just include things that bring you pleasure and energy, but also that help you to shift your, just kind of shift your energy a little bit. So, for example, if you're feeling stagnated or you're feeling like you're not able to make a certain decision, what I like to do, or if I've been overworking myself, I have 3 things that I enjoy doing that kind of bring me out of that kind of rut of what I'm feeling and just feeling like I'm over exhausted. And the first one is taking a shower. There's something about just the water and the shift in sense this the sensory, I guess, feeling. That always kind of just boosts my energy and also just kind of reframes my perspective on things. So if I'm looking at a problem all day, doing that for some reason just can help me kind of reset. Another thing is going for a drive with no one, I mean, no one, nowhere like in particular to go, and also by myself. Sometimes I'll go and I'll listen to music. Most times I'll just go in silence. Just going for a 30-minute drive, that also is something that can kind of help me to shift things. And then the last one, for some reason, oh, it's just going for a walk. Spending time in nature just in some sort of ways. Most of the times I just go for a walk and look at birds or something like that. Um, okay, so now embracing pleasure without burnout. We are approaching 141, so I want to try to get through these as fast as I can. So if anybody does have questions. Okay, so embracing pleasure without burnout. One of the things is creating a weekly joy ritual. So once you have that list of all of the things that bring you joy, pretty much dedicate specific times each week for those activities or just those experiences. So whether it's activities like what I just shared, or another thing that I enjoy or that brings me joy is actually cooking. So if you're someone that loves to cook, but cooking has become more of a checklist thing that you have to do because it's a necessary responsibility, either because you have kids or just other mouths to feed, roommates, a partner, or even just for yourself, if it's become an exhausting thing, try to set aside 1 day a week where you can utilize the activity for something that brings you more pleasure, or incorporate things like introducing a new recipe. One friend of mine just recently started hosting. And so she shared that she started making weekly menus just for fun, whether she's hosting or not, but she's actually incorporated that into her household to kind of bring that pleasure back into an activity that she used to love, but then started to become more of a checklist thing. And then also just setting boundaries for overindulgence. So, like I said, I always go back to binge watching or social media use. These things are not, I mean, I guess they are kind of bad according to research, but I don't say this to say that these things should be eliminated altogether. Just kind of more so breaking it up. So, like allowing yourself 2 episodes to watch a new show or something, and then switching to something else, even if it's just for 5 minutes. So, even if it's just going outside for a walk, going to grab a bite to eat, perhaps calling a friend, or it could be something productive like writing maybe 2 paragraphs towards your book, creating 2 social media posts for the week, whatever those things might look like, just breaking it up. And it can literally just be one thing you do for 10 minutes, and then you can go right back to watching those episodes. So that way you can at least feel like one or two things will happen. One of two things will happen. Either one, you will go back into the activity like doom scrolling on social media or TikTok in particular while we still have it. Oh, no, no, no. No working. Okay. So doom scrolling on social media, what you might get back into that activity and start watching things and just kind of check out. And you might not even think about the fact that you just wrote 2 pages for your book. Or you might be enjoying writing the first paragraph and then recognize that you're got into the flow of things and you've written 5 pages towards your book. And maybe you want to go back to that activity or maybe you don't. But at least you kind of switched up um, the energy within yourself and your own realm. So that way you're not carrying guilt about whatever activity you're doing. And then you're also avoiding or lessening the possibility of burnout because now you're switching your task. And so that you've kind of broken it down into something that is enjoyable, pleasurable, but then also something that serves you more in that moment. And so you can kind of oscillate back and forth. So then also making decisions before you make plans. So this one I would say is the most important part. So there are 4 things that you have to decide is one, whether your low points are caused by physical or emotional drains. So when you do that energy audit, you're going to see which specific times of the day and which specific days of the week do your low points are your low points consistent. Then you're going to recognize, is this caused by a more physical drain? Is this because I'm dehydrated? Is this because I've been immobile for several hours working? Is this because I have not eaten? Or is this an emotional thing? That could also be from not eating. Is this because I'm constantly interrupted on this day by my boss because they always have like a emotional outburst? Is this because, you're routinely getting into arguments with your partner and so that's what's causing your low points? Or is it because you've just been overwhelmed and feeling more depressed and you haven't had any emotional outlets? So figure out once you do that scale, figure out what is causing each of those things. And then the second thing you want to decide is whether unhealthy habits are the root cause. So if you're having those low points, maybe it could be because of doom scrolling. It could be because you are constantly engaging in activities that are more distraction based rather than things that are more encouraging for you to have more of a productive day. For me, one of my unhealthy habits, which is kind of a healthy, then turns unhealthy, is I fast. I practice intermittent fasting every day. But because of that and my excessive workload, I often will just go days without eating very much. And so fasting intentionally is one thing, fasting unintentionally especially for long periods of time without replenishing your body is obviously setting yourself up for failure. So I know oftentimes when my energy, especially lately, when my energies are at a low point, is because I have not eaten something to replenish me, something with either electrolytes, something with antioxidants at least to support my fasting. A lot of times when people start intermittent fasting or try to increase their fasting intervals, they realize that how important it is for like probiotics getting in your greens, all of those like different nutrients. For me, I'm vitamin D deficient, so things like that, making sure I don't forget to take my supplements, those sorts of things are very directly related. So, number three is whether you secretly like to receive sympathetic understanding and concern from others. This is my favorite one, and I think the most important one. I not just think, but I have experienced this with my own self and then also with a lot of people around me, even just with the examples that I've shared about some of my friends and then also some of my clients. Um, Most people enjoy receiving some sort of sympathy um, from others regarding them being so tired and overworked. So, just kind of how I spoke about earlier, for example, there's that whole like social media phenomenon, like if someone is in the hospital, and this is not most people, but some influencers have done things where if they are in the hospital, even if it's just for dehydration, posting about it for that sympathy versus posting about it for an educational purpose to help people understand why you should, take hydration seriously. Most people aren't taking that approach. It's more so just to earn some sort of sympathy to make us feel better about overworking ourselves essentially. And so, what I find that's the most um, challenging with this and harmful is that when we seek that understanding from others, it comes from a good place, but it also reaffirms this idea that, well, I'm just always tired. I'm always tired. I'm always tired. And it makes you feel like there's less that you can do about it, less that you have control over. And then receiving concern from others makes you feel comfortable in a space where you should be trying to break out of. And so, lastly, deciding whether you genuinely desire to change your physique and affect more energy. So, this is pretty much after you assess all of the other three, really asking yourself, do I actually want to do what I can to change this? To change this, or am I still, comfortable? Do I still want the sympathy? Do I feel like I'm not going to take this seriously yet? I think most people, if you're here especially, you want to change it. And I think by implementing just some of the few things that I shared would be enough to get started on that. But I also, in the document, I included some more deep reflective journal prompts just to get you guys to really understand, like I shared with you guys earlier, your values and how those things play a part in your conversations with yourself and then also with others. So now the importance of deciding, and I promise I'm going to try to go a little bit faster. So indecision drains energy. So I think this is one of the biggest things that is an energy depleter or depletes us of energy. The fear of making the wrong choice often leads to us just overthinking more. And so then we become stagnated. We don't make a decision at all. So, one thing to make daily decisions faster, setting a time limit for each choice, and then prioritizing clarity over perfection. So, this is something that I learned when I used to work in sales. Um, so oftentimes we would have different like people or prospects that would come up or they would just walk by. And so you would have to make a decision about who you were going to approach because if you didn't approach them, one of your peers might or another company or different things. So I got into that mode of just counting down from five. Someone in my team taught me this. Pretty much, you just count five, four, three, two, one, and you just make the decision impulsively and you just start. So, oftentimes, I would see somebody walking by and they would have already walked past me. But if I made that decision, I'd go in front of them and say, "Hi, my name is O'Shea, blah, blah, blah." Yeah. Hated working in sales, but loved working in sales. But it taught me so, so many very useful skills. And so now I apply that to everything, especially not just in conversations with people, but for example, I'm writing two more books right now. With those books, I made the decision first to finish each of them or all of my edits by December 31st last year. I did that. Now I'm working on edits. I gave myself until pretty much just around Valentine's Day to finish the edits. And then I'm going to send it off to my manufacturer to get my samples. So, me making the decision to set a deadline, easy decision. However, the daily decisions that I have to make to keep on that deadline is where this kind of comes into play of just kind of like, I don't always necessarily count down, but what I do is when I recognize I'm in that mode of like trying to figure out if I'm making the wrong choice in a particular work page or the way that I'm writing something or whatever it is, when I'm starting to get into that like overthinking mode, then I just kind of tell myself, okay, or I ask myself, what is my goal here? What do I want to achieve? What does done look like? Am I going to be able to achieve all of those things? If it's yes with what I'm already doing, I'm not going to change it. If it's no and I'm not clear, then I'll just mark it as something that I'm unclear about. And then I go back to that at the end of the week. That way I'm not spending an extra 30 minutes wondering what I should do and going back and forth. I either tell myself I'm going to make the decision at a later date when I have scheduled time, or I make the decision to just keep what I'm doing. And no matter what, I'm not going to change the course of direction. Helps a lot. Also, decisions just affirm autonomy. Obviously, most of us have probably experienced this going into adulthood and also sustaining that. Taking responsibility for your choices just reinforces self reliance. And the more you feel like you can rely on yourself and trust yourself, the more you not only help with your own personal autonomy, but also you just feel more self sufficient. So also decisive action sparks momentum. So just like what I said before with the sales, once you get started, you kind of just get into the flow of things. It's usually the overthinking that just kind of stagnates you. But once you make that decision, you can kind of move more freely, especially when you put it into practice. And then also integrity and consistency matters. So integrity just with yourself, but then also the consistency is your responsibility. So, consistently learning how to commit to your decisions will strengthen your own self integrity. And that just kind of goes back to affirming your autonomy. I think that when people think of integrity, they think of it in terms of a more outward thing, but your word is bond not only to others, but also to yourself. And I think that most people like to hold everyone else accountable for their commitments or things, and it's just much easier to see. But if you have specific goals in mind for yourself or things that you want to do, like most of you that are here, you have specific things that you want to do under the hat of reclaiming your energy. So it's not just about getting more energy. For some of you, it's making decisions better. For some of you, it's improving your physical health. So for some of you, it's improving your mental health and removing mental clutter or getting out of overthinking or removing limiting beliefs. Like there's so many different ways that we contribute to our overall energy. So understanding that the more self-integral you are with yourself, the more confident you will feel in your ability to make progress in each of those areas. And so, lastly, obviously, decisions are very empowering. So, each choice that you make, whether it's small or big, is an act of self leadership as well. So, like I said, the more capable you feel that you are of leading yourself, just the better your life in general. So then also keeping in mind, so your decisions reflect your future. So this is another journal prompt. This will also be in the workbook. But what decision or choice is currently weighing on me, and how can I approach it with clarity and confidence? So most of us, like when before I work with any new client, one of the first questions that I always ask them. So first, I have them go through 7 days of the energy audit, time audit, conversations that they've had, pretty much just journaling throughout the entire time. And I don't work with anyone unless they've done it for at least 3 days, because that real raw data is more than enough information to get started. And most people avoid looking at that. But that's what can pretty much help you get from point A to point B significantly faster. So the second thing that I do after that is ask them what decisions and choices are currently weighing on you and how can you approach them with clarity and confidence. And then also, I ask them, which is actually not up here, but what decisions are you avoiding making and what actions have you avoided making? So this can be as simple as, for example, me. I knew that I needed to renew my driver's license. I think 2 days after New Year's, I saw that it was about to expire. And in my mind, I knew, okay, perfect. This is something I need to be on top of. I only have a couple of weeks. However, I only recently, a couple of days ago, recalled that I needed to get my driver's license renewed. So, what I would typically do, which I have not done, every week is make a list of what decisions have I not made, regardless of the reason. This one was just overwhelm and fatigue. I honestly just forgot. So it could be forgetting to go, or I need to go to the DMV, something like that. It could be I have been avoiding going to renew my supplement subscriptions. And for the reasons like that, it could be because you don't want to address the cost of everything. You haven't decided whether or not it fits in your budget for this year, or you're just being lazy and haven't gone into the store physically to go get them, or you haven't felt like going online, whatever it is. We always have a multitude of reasons for why we avoid doing things. The reasons are not always important. Right now, I just ask people to focus on the decisions you need to make and the things you've been avoiding. That alone will give you a lot more clarity. Most people are self directed and they can take it from there. If you're not, then ask yourself those deep layered questions of why am I avoiding making this decision? And what can I do about it, pretty much. Okay. Next, so just making confident decisions. Two things that have helped, like I said before, setting a time limit for decisions just helps you to avoid decision paralysis. And then also, if you're trying to make decisions about things and you're avoiding looking inward, and by inward, I always say that as more of a spiritual thing. So if you believe in a higher power, I always look at that as the source of everything. So when I say inward, I mean like your connection to source, but then also just your self-directed stuff. When I say external things, I'm more so focused on like you're looking for validation from other people, whether that's YouTube videos, experts, podcast people, like whatever it is. If you're feeling like you are overwhelming yourself with information or other people's opinions about what you should do, um, giving yourself a time limit also will just help you to reassure that you are less dependent on those things. And then, of course, creating a pros and cons list. I do this for every single thing, literally, even the most mundane decisions. Um, just because I like to put it into practice, to be honest. And I'm a very visual person, so I love to see the potential benefits. And when it's very clear to me, I can make the decision much faster. So if you're deciding to like move or change jobs or make a big purchase, or even like the micro decisions that go into that, make a pros and cons list. For me, I like to manually write things, but when I don't always feel like doing that, I go into my notes section on my phone. I might type something, or I'll just do text to speech, and I'll just do like all my pros and then all my cons. If you guys really want to, actually, no, I'm not even going to suggest that. Someone suggested to me plugging it into Chat GPT, but to be honest, I wouldn't even recommend that. Um, if you feel like it's a more daunting decision, perhaps if you don't have access to resources like um, therapy or a financial expert or something, if you genuinely do not have access to resources that you feel like are going to help you make those decisions faster, then like if you're on a time crunch, then I would utilize it and just ask it to assess your pros and cons list. Do not use it to make the pros and cons list. I've seen a lot of content like that too, where people rely on ChatGPT to do the heavy lifting for them. And again, the more you learn how to lead yourself, the better. Relying on any sort of external um, operating system or person or whatever um, only hurts you in the long run. So, just also another little thing. ChatGPT is great. I haven't made a video on this yet because I don't really think it's that necessary. But if you are seeing things like that, just try to avoid. To me, that's no different than going to 20 different friends and asking them, what do they think about a situation? It can be very, very useful, but it also can confuse you more because you become more other directed and you don't know how to lead and guide yourself. And then also, it lessens if you are spiritual, it lessens your ability to be connected to source and really understand what is best for you. So, another thing, do not overexert yourself in any way. In my last workshop, I talked about Alexander technique and the importance of Alexander technique, but also the importance of it's more Pilates based, just understanding your mind, body, spirit connection. So, with this, um, the example that I usually give, it's like suddenly deciding to run a mile, a day, or like lift heavy weights or stay up all night can be very harmful because accessing boundless energy requires gradual change. So some people can decide to just wake up and go run a mile every day for 30 days, and that is great. But most people will have to start with walking, especially if you're going from being mostly inactive. Running a mile every day will literally overexert not only your like all of your muscles and like every cell in your body, but it's just not sustainable and you're more prone to injury. So what I recommend to people is just having finding ways to transform like those bad habits and also unhealthy thoughts and attitudes over time rather than just forcing yourself into extreme action, especially without preparation. So just remembering, one, I say the importance of oxygen because I think that people think of energy and they think of like the things that I physically do. And we overlook the one biggest blessing that we have that we don't even have to ask for, which is oxygen. Deep breathing, most of us do not know how to breathe properly in general. But deep breathing is a way for us to be very intentional about taking in oxygen and also understanding the better connection to our body and how oxygen flows to make our body function. So, what I recommend to people always is to not necessarily read a study, but to go on YouTube and find some sort of visual aid to help you understand the importance of oxygen for every single function within your body, for every single organ, and really just understanding the different organs in your body too, understanding the different directions of blood flow and why it matters, understanding even for intermittent fasting, understanding apogee and like why each of those like different phases matter because I think a lot of people are not only misinformed, but we take bite-sized things out of big picture like research and kind of apply it to our life and it's not sustainable if you don't understand the foundations of things. So anyway, you can do that or not do it, but just understanding the importance of oxygen and also just your lung health. So for me, the main thing of that, like I said earlier, is just breath work. Incorporating that into your day in the first part of the morning, I think is more helpful. I have a friend turned client that actually started doing the Wim Hof method every morning. And he found that that gave him not only an extreme burst of energy in the mornings when he was not really a morning person, but it also gave him more mental clarity before starting his day, before like picking up his phone for emails, before interacting with anyone. Like he was very particular about those things. So I'm sure that helps, like minimizing any other outside noise and distractions, but intentional breath work itself, I believe, is very life changing. So, diaphragmatic breathing, I told you guys is one thing that I do is just lying down, placing one hand on your chest and the other on your stomach. And when you inhale deeply, your stomach should rise. And when you exhale, your stomach should lower. That's it. That's just the most proper way to breathe. And just putting that into practice throughout the day. And then also improving your indoor air quality. The last workshop, I talked about pretty much different ways you can do that. You can either buy air purifying plants, which I think are the best ways to do it. Or you can actually purchase an air purifier and just make sure that you regularly change the filters and then just regularly ventilating each area of your home as well. I think I forget who it was, but pretty much someone came out and said that our indoor home air quality is typically worse than being outside. And this has just been for many years, but it is also obviously worsening considering the different climate changes. But also, regardless of that, the things that get trapped in our home, we often bring things into our home as well that make it worse, like a lot of fragrance products, a lot of candles. Um, a lot of furniture, different things that emit stuff. There's so many different things that we can avoid everything. So that's why I think incorporating the plants and then also getting an air purifier is useful. And then also just changing your air filtration system in your home. I think that's something that is overlooked by a lot of homeowners. Do not skip out on those things. And certainly if you can afford to do so, do not be cheap about things like that because your quality of life overall a lot of times we overlook the long-term benefits of things. And this is just a random little tidbit, but what I also recommend to people, I have done this for every one of my friends, and they kind of hated me for it in the beginning, but um, you can find out, and this is not the most accurate thing. You can actually go to experts to do this, but if you don't want to have to pay, there are quizzes that you can take or assessments that help you understand what your predictability of your death year might be. And this sounds very, very morbid, but the reason why I do it for myself, you assess your health, you put in what your current health is, your lifestyle habits, like whether or not you're a smoker, how often you drink water, how often you exercise, how often you are immobile, how often you feel stress. All of these different major contributors to taking, in some of these cases, years off of your life, and really being extremely honest, and it will give you an age. And I take that age very seriously. Obviously, every single year, my very first priority is making sure that that goes up. So I had the the blessing and pleasure of working with someone that is in their 80s, and they are known in Los Angeles as a very, very, very healthy person. Like a lot of people, all different ages, go to him. He's not like an expert or anything. He's just always prioritized physical movement, physical health in general, but specifically physical movement and stretching. Um, Also, daily meditations, and then dream analysis is also something that he argues is very important. I would just say restful sleep, and then mindfulness, meditation, and just self reflection. And then also diet for him is not necessarily about eating. The perfect diet is more so just about incorporating the right amount of nourishment for his body to make sure he's not depleted. And so I say that just to say there are so many different elements or aspects that are contributing to your health and that contribute to you living a long, healthy life. And most people overlook those things. So if you want to do it, I just recommend being prepared for the results and then understanding that there are things that you can do about it. Like if you're a smoker, I have a couple of friends that are smokers, avid smokers. Um, if changing that habit is too difficult, then maybe don't focus on changing that habit or removing it. I always find that people are more likely to create change and sustain it by, instead of like removing something bad, but just incorporating something good. So typically, people kind of lessen their crutch or like connection to the bad habit. So over time. Anyway, the importance of good posture. This one is pretty straightforward. Obviously, your ears, shoulders, and hips should align to maintain a straight, balanced spine. So, what I love about Alexander Technique and even in Pilates, they teach you how to situate your head, like your actual skull, at the top of your spine. And so, that is something that I would recommend going to someone, maybe like an acupuncturist or something. I don't know, someone in that kind of realm that understands muscle groups and stuff. You don't have to go to a Pilates instructor or an Alexander Technique instructor. And you can also learn how to do these things on your own. But I do think that it helps to work with a professional at least a couple of times. That way they can really move your body and help you understand the different muscle groups and also help you to be able to guide yourself. So that way you can do it on your own. And then also just muscle strengthening exercises. Um, I think this is more talked about now, but I think this was like done decades ago, the study. But pretty much, obviously, as you get older, muscle strengthening is extremely important. So, one thing that people always talk about, like when you are older, the reason why a lot of older people injure themselves from falling is not necessarily from just the impact of the fall, but it's also because their muscles take longer to recover and well, not even regenerate, but recover. And also when you lose like the grip in your hands, I'm like gesturing, I can't think of the word. Um, it makes it more difficult, obviously, for you to brace yourself. And then also even well, yeah, I guess brace yourself is the word I was looking for. But then also just improving your overall stability for yourself. That is I feel like I was going somewhere with that, but yeah, that is important for your posture as well. And then also just preventing certain things. Like in younger people, one of the biggest issues is that thing called text neck. So that's pretty much where you're just like kind of looking at your phone nonstop for hours. And kind of hunched over. So that's another thing. I've had some people that have bought like those back um, posture things that could work, but also I think that you could just use certain exercises too, for a longer period of time, and you'll find that you can get pretty much the same results. And then so again, just daily alignment check. So one thing I do, like I said, because I typically work for a long time without moving too much, I do this like standing against the wall with your head, shoulders, and hips touching it, and then just kind of adjust yourself to align properly, and just do it and then rest, do it and then rest, and just kind of like get yourself comfortable with that good posture. And then do your best to, when you finish with that, I do it like 3 or 4 times and then just kind of walk off and try to stay in that space. Even just doing that a handful of times, again, your body needs repetition, your mind needs repetition, intentional repetition. So that way you can kind of get back to a better home base. And then core strengthening exercises like planks, bridges, back extensions. These are all great things to include. Like I said, for working out and stuff like that, I don't necessarily have specific workout routines. I just have like things that I enjoy doing and things that I also need to do. So I'm also healing a hand injury and an ankle injury. So there are certain things that I cannot do to the full extent. So instead of trying to do like 30 push-ups because of the kind of weakness that I have in my hand, I just focused on doing planks. So still kind of giving you the same or kind of the same effects. It doesn't necessarily target every same muscle group, but it's kind of a substitute based on what my limitations currently are. Okay, so then the importance of hydration. This one also goes without saying, so I won't go too much into this. Um, just obviously, dehydrated muscles are no fun. Most people have experienced dehydration in their muscles. Usually, it's when you have muscle spasms. Also, just means that your muscles might be more fatigued. You're not working them well enough. I currently have a couple of friends that have had some injuries that it is taking them longer to recover and heal because they are not actively working out their muscles, or at least those specific muscle groups where their injuries were. So just making it a habit to drink a glass of water before you do anything that's important. My little hack, because I'm really bad at drinking water, or let me not say that I have been bad at drinking water, is the first thing in the morning, I just drink a whole water bottle, like almost before I do anything else, just to make sure that I do not forget. And then I actually started to drink more coconut water. So what I do is if I'm changing things, like say I've been working at the table for a couple of hours, if I'm going to go to the restroom, if I'm going to go cook something to eat, if I'm going to go run to the store, I will just grab a coconut water and make sure that I drink it before I return back to whatever I'm doing. So then another thing, so morning hydration, that's my main thing that I do. And then setting reminders. So I actually have a couple of reminders throughout the day, but they're all the same. They're just like wellness check-ins. So the first thing that I do during my reminder is sit in silence, say what I'm grateful for. And I use that as an opportunity to say, like, to see what am I avoiding? What does my body need? What does my mind need? So if my mind needs rest, I'll use that as a way to give myself 10 minutes rest. If my body needs food or um, water, then I'll make the time to do that. If I feel like I'm just kind of overwhelmed and I just want to take a little bit more of a different kind of break, I guess, what I do is like a brain dump. So instead of just like sitting in silence, because sometimes that can make things worse for me because my mind is racing, I will just do a brain dump and write down everything that's on my mind. And most of the time, I don't use that information. It's just to kind of get it out of there. So then also, sorry, that says he importance, but the importance of eliminating toxins. This is why I say prioritize done over perfect. So practicing progressive muscle relaxation has been also a game changer for me, that and the diaphragmatic breathing. So pretty much you just start by tensing each muscle group for 5 to 10 seconds, starting from your toe or with your toes and then working your way up to your head and then releasing the tension and then noticing the difference in just how your body feels each time. It helps to also reduce muscle fatigue and increase nutrient delivery to your cells, which is another thing that I learned from that 82-year-old, and then flushing out metabolic waste products. So obviously, we know there are different ways of eliminating toxins. I would avoid buying anything that specifically targets that kind of stuff. I always say instead of buying a product to solve your problem, try to incorporate and practice the habits first, and then also buy the product to kind of aid in that, not to substitute doing the work. So dry brushing is something you can do. Saunas, if you have the, ability, I think that one thing that we take advantage of is the fact that we all have access to very hot water, or most of us, to very hot water, and we are capable of actually like taking showers every single day. I think that hot shower alone is also very beneficial, and then also cold showers too. But just also bringing yourself and being grounded in those like little opportunities that we have, because that is not something that everyone has. And so, not to make everything a lesson, but I do really think that each of these things we should be very grateful for the fact that we can incorporate these things into our life to enable some change, and just being very satisfied by that thought. And then also, like I said, deep breathing to just help to reduce stress overall. One of I will actually send a video, because I don't know how to describe it necessarily just quickly, but it's a specific type of breathing activity that I do before I go into meditation. And I've shared it recently with a couple of friends because I've been doing some guided meditations for people and even clients. And it so deeply relaxes you that most people feel like they drift off into another world. Like, it's the quietest their mind has ever been. So I will send you all that video as well, because whenever I'm overwhelmed and stressed, or I'm feeling like I'm about to like cry, or I'm having anxiety, whatever it is, that grounds me so much, and it just puts you right into your body, but you feel so utterly relaxed. It's crazy. So let's see, just eliminating toxins. So antioxidant rich foods. So obviously a lot of berries, leafy greens. My favorite is kale. I am a kale smoothie type of person, but I also just love sauteed kale. Finding recipes and things that can kind of make stuff better also helps. So, like, I'm not huge on Brussels sprouts, but I've learned that I like Brussels sprouts recently, just depending on how they're made. Green tea, also a big one. I drink green tea every single morning. And then turmeric, incorporating turmeric into your meals. I actually take turmeric like capsules, because I generally like experience a lot of inflammation. So I do that daily, but sometimes it can be very harsh on my digestive system if I'm not eating much. So just making sure that you incorporate it somehow into your meals. Um, and then intermittent fasting, like I said, the 16-8 I think works best for most people. I actually do a 24-hour fast most days. And then when I am out of my work sprints, I generally break my fast with like a salad or a soup or something like that. And then I'll just do that for a set period of time while I'm actively working to repair like my body on something. But then my regular fasting is usually like 16-8 or 24. So, okay. Another important thing, and then I'm going to be wrapping up in about 10 minutes. I want to say thank you again for everybody that's still here. Are you a see what you made me do person? So let me keep it on that. So pretty much the see what you made me do person, I think, is another thing. So at some point we have all found ourselves blaming someone or something for our unhappiness, which is a normal reaction. But I think it's also important to recognize that our own inner discord is often at least partially responsible. Like, I always say, no one can make me feel angry unless I'm already harboring that emotion inside. It's, and that's not necessarily saying like if I were sitting pleasant, that someone can't do something to make me angry. But the reason that someone can make you angry is because that is something that is within us that we have not released, which is impossible to release all the time. But the purpose behind that is just saying the more we practice to release these things that we're harboring unnecessarily, the less it can easily be triggered. So I'll breeze through these, just the importance of perspective, letting go of the see what you made me do mindset. Um, You start by recognizing that your emotions are your responsibility and any external triggers only reveal what already exists in you. So, shifting your focus from blaming others to asking what the situation can teach you about your own needs and unresolved feelings. So, I always recommend people starting with 1% of accountability. So, looking at what situations you've recently blamed others for how you feel or for your actions, and how can you take responsibility for your emotions and reactions. Another example, a friend that I spoke with often blames her partner for how she feels about things. For example, um, she will say, like, his forgetfulness is something that makes her very, very angry. And so it's not something that she, up until recently, that she had had conversations with him about. Instead of having the conversation and making him aware that that was a problem for her, she would just be reactive to it without expressing why. And instead of also recognizing that maybe there are some things that she, could do, like the first 1%, I think, is making it aware that there's a problem to your partner, because something can't be fixed if they're not aware of it. I'm not talking about situations where they are aware, but that's just one thing. And then also, what was the other thing? Sorry, my dog's doing some stuff. Um, there it is. How can you take responsibility for your emotions and reactions? So, even in situations where she or you may be feeling warranted in your reaction, how can you then just take responsibility for what you're feeling? So, if she's feeling neglected, or she's feeling like she's not being a priority, or whatever the feelings are, I always ask her how much of this is about him and how much of this is about you. And she always wants to say it's about him, it's about him. If he weren't so forgetful, this and that. And I always just ask her, okay, well, have you experienced this before? And oftentimes, most people will say, well, yes. And when you get deeper, um, in the questions, then people are a little bit more comfortable sharing. So for her growing up, she's often felt like her needs were neglected, because things that she would speak up about, or even in her previous relationship, things she would specifically ask for were overlooked. So when she was making it clear that it was a problem, it was not being addressed in the way that she wanted. And so she made the assumption that he would do the same. And he may or he may not. But I wanted to help her understand that you have to now take the responsibility for that, even though this is like to you. You didn't, you asked for a certain person to change a certain way that they interacted with you or whatever it is, and they did not take that as a responsibility or a priority. Then that was not your fault that they chose not to do that. But what is your responsibility now is the fact that you have this fear in you. And so what I recommended to her pretty much was giving herself space. So in situations where she asked, like, her partner to do something for her, instead of, like, she would almost set him up for failure when the time was coming. Instead of reminding him, hey, don't forget I asked you if you could stop by the store, she would just say, so what are you doing? Like, at the time that he was supposed to be doing it. And then if he wasn't doing that thing, she would go off and pretty much say, well, I asked you to do this and you never listen, and blah, blah, blah. And again, I get it, rightfully so, and how she feels the frustration. However, giving yourself space to check in and say, okay, is there something that I may not be aware of at this time? Could something in his day have changed? Could he have planned to do it maybe at a different time? Is there a possibility that everything that I'm assuming right now is not true? And if there's a possibility, invite the other person involved for a conversation. Maybe you'll still be disappointed, maybe you won't, but the reality is, give that person that respect, and also relieve yourself of that overwhelm by making those assumptions. Okay. Let's see. Perfect. 5 more minutes. So things just to help shifting your perspective, pausing, reflecting when you're feeling triggered. Like I said, why does this upset me? What does this situation reveal about my boundaries or unmet needs? Hold on. Sorry. This freaking see wait. Oh no, did I lose it? Oh, okay. I go back to share. Okay, once. Okay, she walked away. Now let's get back. Okay. All right. Everybody can still see the presentation, right? I lost the text chat, but I'll just keep going. Make sure my mic is still on. We're all good. Great. Okay. So anyway, can you set yourself free of guilt and open yourself? So the last little thing, just the importance of letting go of the old. These are also things that harbor a lot of unnecessary energy. So writing down specific regrets or guilt, then objectively list what you've learned from it or how it contributes to your personal growth. So, releasing the weight of guilt by being better. I think another thing, guilt and shame are also very unnecessarily tiresome, especially in where we hold them in our body. Not necessarily saying that it was caused by us, but a lot of times, whether it was caused by us or not, we contribute to a lot of unnecessary weight that it puts on us. So, how has guilt been influencing your choices and actions? And how can you let go of it to embrace a mindset of openness and growth? This is also going to be in the workbook. And then just a nod to the past and a hug to the present. This is super cheesy, but bear with me. What old beliefs, habits, or ways of thinking are you clinging to, and how can you release them to make space for new growth and opportunities? So, this is more so just saying don't live in the past and don't really obsess about the future. Really think about it when it comes to these things. When you are easily triggered or specifically focusing on things that you can let go of in order to move forward, especially with energy, what you want to do is figure out what things you were holding on to in the past that's kind of weighing you down. And so it's obvious to think of it in that way, but I think that the more you recognize not only specific experiences, but beliefs and habits and just ways of thinking, those are all practices. You do practice your beliefs because you rehearse them. And the more you rehearse them in your mind, the more you regurgitate them outwardly, the more it not only manifests in your outward life, but the more actions you do to support those things. So, for example, if someone has a history of experiencing a lot of anxiety, whether the reasons were valid or not, you develop now beliefs about things that you feel like you should be anxious about. And so, learning how to avoid that way of thinking and just applying those things to everything can really make way for you to just experience less fatigue and just more energy in the present and grounding yourself. So, then lastly, do you know how to relax? So, the importance of intentional relaxation, really just examining your feelings and motives when you are tired, so that when you make the decision to move away from those causes, you avoid creating a negative approach by or negative approach to resolving a normal and natural occurrence. So, looking at rest as renewal, intentional relaxation just can help to align your mind and your body, fostering readiness. So, you just feel a little bit more prompt, resilience. You feel like you are able to recover faster and more efficiently. And positivity, it also just supports your mental fortitude. And so, like I said, being proactive about rest and viewing it as preparation for action. I have a really good friend who takes power naps throughout the day, almost every single day. And to be honest, I think it is a great way to reset your mind and body. Most athletes take power naps, especially when they're doing away games, as a way to not only just recoup their energy, but also, and also nurses, to recoup their energy, but also to give them like that mental clarity that they need so that less things are distracting them and taking up space in their mind. I think that looking at athletes in particular, that would be a great example watching any documentaries or something like that about athletes and the way that they recover and relax, taking away from the fact that they have the money and access to different resources and stuff, but looking at the basics behind what they suggest and what their trainers and the people in their life suggest. And then yeah, just recharging yourself for growth. So learning how to relax the right way. So thinking about how you currently approach relaxation and how can you shift to a more intentional and authentic, rejuvenating form of rest that supports your future growth and energy? So, signs that you are relaxing in a way that drains you rather than replenishes you. So, a lot of us, like I said, we look at sitting on social media as a form of relaxation because we're not physically doing much. However, what's going on mentally is far worse because most of the time, when we're, let's say, if you're sitting on social media for 5 hours a day at one given time, what's happening physically is your body is relaxed, resting. What's happening mentally is your mind is checked out. But physically, you are not prioritizing physical movement and activity, things that your body actually need, your heart and different things to have like a fluctuation that gives you a balance. But then also, what's going on in your mind are the conversations that you may or may not be having, the guilt that you're feeling about what you should be doing, but you're not, the decisions that you have to make, the responsibilities that you're thinking about or that you're trying to avoid. Whatever those things are that are going on in the background are still weighing on you. And the more we check out with these activities that are just distractions, the more they weigh on us in our subconscious.